Hi, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to What is JHipster Lite and Why Should You Care? I'm Julien Dubois. I lead the JHipster project. I created it 8 years ago, and I also work at Microsoft as a manager in the developer advocacy team. I do two things at Microsoft. I do Java and I do JavaScript, and JHipster is both Java and JavaScript, so it's really at the core of my work. You can follow me on Twitter at Julien Dubois if you want to react, give feedback, and anything else, just to say hi. So, what we'll talk about today, we're going to talk about JHipster, of course, which is the core project from the JHipster organization. We'll talk about JHipster Lite, which is a new project that we have created a bit more than 1 year ago, and that is getting some traction. And as we talk about JHipster in general, we'll talk about code generators, software development methodologies, code quality, developer velocity, everything that we love about JHipster. Just to be sure of who you are, who knows about JHipster here? Like, oh, okay, everyone, yeah. Well, nearly everyone. Well, you should, because JHipster is used by DevOps. So if you registered at DevOps, you were already a JHipster user without knowing it. And I talked to Stefan Johnson two days ago, and he told me he was still using it and updating it and so on. And that's basically the core of the issue that we'll talk about today. And I forgot, we'll talk about open source. JHipster is fully open source. It's governed by a non-profit association, so it's not a commercial product. You have people who sell services on top of JHipster, of course, but the software is open source, and well, it's a non-profit organization, so we will never sell like a commercial edition of JHipster at any time. And that's super cool. So let me go back in time a little bit. So the first two slides are slides I used at DevOps maybe 5 years ago to present JHipster. And we're going to go through those slides to have some history and see where we are going. So about, 15 years ago, the Spring framework was created, and it was full of all those delicious ingredients like Spring Security, Spring MVC, Spring Transactions, Spring AOT, was any more? Oh, Spring ORM, lots of them. They were wonderful, but they were all separated, and if you wanted to make something useful for you, you needed to configure them together. At the time, it was with XML, and it was tedious and long. And it was still cool, but not super efficient. So that's why 6-7 years ago, Spring Boot was created. And Spring Boot is the same ingredients all put together, and that's wonderful because it's easier to use, and still the same ingredients, so perfect. And about at the same time when Spring Boot was created, in fact we started a bit before, we started JHipster, and JHipster is a bit of the same idea, but we go beyond that. With JHipster, we create a front end for you. So initially it was with Angular, now we also support React and Vue. We generate a database for you, we generate the Docker files for you, we have everything ready for production. We have the development toolings, which are already configured for you, so you get a lot more than what you have with Spring Boot. But that comes at some cost. And the feedback we had from some people, and that's the new slides now, the feedback from some people is that this ready-made application was a bit too big for them. In fact, we have like a spectrum of users, and some of our users are students. They are learning Java, they are learning Spring Boot, and they are very happy with having the meal served for themselves. Very easy for them to get started, very easy to learn. Those people are very happy with JHipster. Then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got experts who know Spring Boot really well, and they see that we provide a lot of things, but they don't want all of them. For example, by default with JHipster, you have security, and you have a database, and maybe you don't want security, maybe you don't want a database, maybe you don't want both of them. And it means that those people needed to reconfigure what we were generating for them. Usually it's easier to reconfigure something that was created that do stuff from scratch, but still that was too complicated and maybe too big for them. So that's the feedback we got, and we realized that in fact what people wanted was those small hamburgers which are configurable. They want something smaller and more configurable than what we provide with the current version of JHipster. I'm going to call it JHipster Classic. It's not a normal word, but just to be clear, JHipster Classic is the current version of JHipster, and JHipster Lite is a new project that we're going to talk about. So people wanted something lighter and more modular than what we are providing today for different reasons, and that's what we're going to explain. But first, I just want to make a few things clear. With JHipster and JHipster Lite, we have the same philosophy, the same people with the same ideas. We focus first on a great developer experience, so you got everything working out of the box. We want to provide you with a huge choice of working options. The working part is the important part here. There are different code generators, like start.spring.io, well, lots of them, where you can select options, but they don't always make sense together. For example, with JHipster, if you select an SQL database, you will have Hibernate. And if you select MongoDB, well, you won't be able to have Hibernate because it doesn't make sense. And that's most of the work that we do. We try to have something which makes sense and that works out of the box, and not provide you with all the options that are possible and that don't really work together. So that's something we want to keep. We also provide you with, let's say, the full range of possible applications, from full microservices, with a let's say big Spring Boot backend, Angular in the front, like the big monolith with a full stack application. But also, some people want to go all the way to microservices, and with JHipster, we also provide a great microservices experience with service discovery, configuration, monitoring, and that's also very important for, well, some people. So we want to keep that choice of options. And last but not least, with JHipster, we've always provided something that was ready to go to production, typically that you can git push to the cloud very easily. I work for Azure, so of course I'm very interested by this feature for my own work. I want something that I git push directly to the cloud. Doesn't only work on Azure, it works with all the major cloud providers, even with some smaller ones. JHipster is an open source project and everybody is welcome to contribute. But we have this focus on both developer experience and production, which is very important for us. So we have this for JHipster Classic and for JHipster Lite. Then we work to improve a few things, and that's the core of my talk today. We wanted to improve composability, so how you can have those different modules work together, let's say, without too much maintenance on our side. We wanted to improve extensibility. A lot of people want to extend JHipster for their own needs, for their company. For example, you work for a company where you have a specific security mechanism, where you have a specific UI, and you want to customize JHipster for this. And you can do it with JHipster Classic. It's something we call the blueprints or modules, depending on what you use. And it works, but it's a bit complicated. And we wanted to improve that. And last but not least, we wanted to improve maintenance. So maintenance from 2 points of view. From the point of view of the JHipster maintainers, so JHipster is coded with something called Yeoman. It's coded in JavaScript. And it's showing its age. I mean, it's an 8-year-old code base with JavaScript, with lots of people who contributed. We had more than 600 contributors, so lots of people. And so the maintenance is complicated on our side, but the maintenance is also complicated for our end users. Like, so for DevOps, Stefan Johnson told me they update their JHipster version regularly, but honestly it's complicated because you've got this generated code, you've got the code that you added, and when you regenerate the core classes, well, it can have, of course, some impact on your business code. And, well, we needed something better here. And that's why we decided to work on JHipster Lite, because we had those ideas, but we also had some breakthrough, some new stuff that appeared. Again, that was 8 years ago, so new stuff have appeared. First of all, there is like a renaissance of Java. There is Java 19, there is GraalVM, there is lots of great developer tooling in Java that, well, it already existed 8 years ago, but it wasn't as good as today. Today we have something much, much better. And as Java developers, it's honestly much easier to code JHipster Lite in Java than JHipster in JavaScript, just because the tooling is better. So it's not really breakthrough, but there is a new architecture that is, let's say, trending today, which is called Hexagonal architecture. So it's not something that we want to push with JHipster Lite, but basically the philosophy of JHipster Classic is that we have a layered application. So you have a repository, a service, and a REST layer, and they call each other. That's very classic. That's what students love. It's easy, and it's performant, so it's a good architecture, but it doesn't scale super well for maintainability when you have lots of classes and lots of people. We realize that with an hexagonal architecture, it might be a bit more complicated at the beginning, but then you have something which is better to maintain, and that solves a big part of our issue. So that's something we want to push more with JHipster Lite. And the biggest point is the last one. The issue we've had with JHipster from the start is that you've got all those options, and the JHipster team, basically, we code those manually. There's no decision tree, there's no intelligence in this, it's all hard-coded. And with JHipster Lite, we have a new REST API that automatically generates such a tree of modules. That's a demo, well, I'm going to do right now, and you will see that this new way of binding modules, linking modules together, is a lot more powerful than what we used to have. Well, we're still having with JHipster Classic. And I also wanted to start a discussion with you on this, as I believe that's very interesting for all kind of code generators. I'm working with other code generators, and I believe that way of doing modules is super interesting. Not easy to do, but the end result is wonderful. So, demo time, and let's just close this anyway. So, we're going to use JHipster Lite, and I'm going to first just point to this website, start.jhipster.tech. That's the classic JHipster. If you want to create a JHipster application now, you just go to start.jhipster.tech, and you can answer a few questions. That's the modules that we talked about, like you want a database, you want a cache, you want Maven or Gradle. You can do everything here on the web and download it or git push it to your GitHub account. And that's what people love with JHipster Classic. I'm going to switch to JHipster Lite, and we're going to do something a bit similar to what we could do here, but you're going to see we've got a lot more options. So first, let me start it. So it's a Java project now, which makes it easier for Java developers. So I'm just going to run it using Java. It's a Spring Boot application, by the way. It's itself a JHipster Lite application. And if I go to my web browser here, also it's here, let me refresh. This is the new UI we have. Let me make this a bit bigger. In fact, we currently have several UIs. This is, I would say, for normal people. We've got a low-level UI if you want to apply those modules by hand. Well, it's more powerful, but you need to know what you do. And probably later, we will have a UI which is similar to what we have here with start.jhipster.tech, something much easier for beginners. But we are currently focusing on that UI, which is, I would say, the main UI for normal people. You can see here, we've got lots of modules. If I go around, some stuff become green, and we've got links arriving. We have two concepts here that I'm going to explain to you, which are the main concepts. If you want to use it, I should have opened this up before. You can go to lite.jhipster.tech. It's live on the web, and you can do the same with the live version. I think it's a newer version compared to the one I have, but it's the same thing. Lite.jhipster.tech if you want to test. Sorry. So I'm going to create a project, and I'm going to explain you the different ideas we have here, and we're going to see if we can do something which is similar to what we were doing with JHipster Classic, but with that new version of JHipster, and we'll see the differences. So first of all, we work in a folder. So if you work in the cloud, we'll have a remote folder. Here you can work locally. So I'm going to create a local folder here. Sorry. I'm going to call it yellow, because I've got lots of ideas. So it's an empty folder, of course. I'm going to copy-paste that here. And I'm going to work in that folder. So I'm first going to just use one module. I'm going to initialize my project to see what's happening. So it's asking me a few questions, very similar to what we have with JHipster Classic. And those questions are like my project name, so yellow, and a short name for my project, so yellow again. And I'm going to apply this. So this created a few files here. Let me open it up with IntelliJ. It's very light at the moment because, yeah, trusting this. very small because we just created an OMSI project, basically. So we've got some configuration files for Git from ESLint. We've got a small readme files with not that much things because, again, it's very simple. And everything is committed into Git. That's one new thing we have. With JHipster, we don't force you, with JHipster Classic, we don't force you to use a specific version control system. But then we realize everybody's using Git, so why not use it? So now we're using Git, and you're going to see this is going to help for a few things. So we can see here, I had that commit 1 minute ago with those few files. Wonderful, my project is started. Now let's do something a bit more interesting. So as you can see, when I go around, I can have a tree of modules. So I'm going to select Spring Boot here, and I'm having some red stuff and some stuff have been selected for me. So let's just have a look at all of this. So the first concept I wanted to show you is dependencies between modules. Spring Boot knows it needs Java-base. Java-base needs Maven Java, which needs to be initialized. So JHipster Lite is able to understand those relationships between modules, so it can generate all the modules that are missing when you want to do Spring Boot. So that's the first thing. And it's red because, yeah, it needs now a base package. So let's say take.yolo. And I'm going to apply those 3 new modules. Oh, yeah, just have a look here. I've got a tick on this one. This one has been applied. And those ones have not been applied yet, so there's not a tick yet. I'm going to apply them. And if I go back to IntelliJ, we can see here I've got 3 new commits, which, of course, are the ones I just did. And IntelliJ, so it was a Maven project, and everything is working out of the box, as usual with JHipster. So I can take my project here. YOLO app is here, and I can run it if I want to. Well, let's run it just to show. This is going to be pretty fast. It's already finished. It's a Spring Boot app. It's not a web app. If we have a close look here, the web is here. We've got Tomcat here, for example. So here I've just created a very small Spring Boot application that is not even a web app. Still, I can use it. I've got well, full test for my app been generated here. Let me run the test. Everything is usable, and that's a very minimalistic JHipster application, which we could not generate before with JHipster Classic. With JHipster Classic, you can only do web apps. Here I can do a batch if I want to. And that gives you, in fact, 2 interesting things that we couldn't do before. The first one is that I can create a batch, and I couldn't create a batch before, so I can do smaller apps. But also, maybe I want to do a web app, but it's too early. You know, I want to code some business code now. I don't need the web app. I don't need the database. I don't need security. I don't need all that stuff yet. I will need them maybe next month when my project will have grown bigger. But I can start working now with something smaller and simpler, so I have more velocity. I have a better developer experience because everything is faster, because it's lighter. Doesn't mean that it will stay light all the time because my app will grow. But I'm not starting with a full thing now, and I will improve my application later. So I have a better experience right now, and I will still have the full experience later when I will need it because my business requires it. So, and as you can see, yeah, all my tests run in 200 milliseconds. And by the way, we've got full test support, like it's 100% tested. So wonderful. Very happy with that. But you're going to tell me that's super simple. We want something a bit more advanced. So let's go to the right. Yeah, I'm going from left to right, you know, from the simplest to the more complicated application. So I'm going to add a web app. So I'm going to use undertow here, and it's asking me for a port, or 8080. Going to apply this. And as you can see, my batch is now transformed into a web application. So new code is created. I've got a new commit which has appeared here. And probably the app already rebuilt itself automatically. And if I run my app now, I'm going to have now a web app with undertow. Yeah, here it is. You can see undertow here. It's running here. And again, it's a very simple app. So we've got the default 404 page from Spring Boot. I hate it, by the way, but that's how it is by default. So super happy about that. But now I realize, so as you see, I'm building my app step by step. But also, I did a step that I don't like. I didn't want to use undertow. I wanted to use Tomcat. I would like to change a module. So first of all, I'm going to show you how we can undo what we just did. And that's super easy because we're using Git. So I'm just going to say, there are different ways to do it, but the easiest way is to say revert commit. I revert my commit. I'm back to my application without undertow. Super cool. If I go back to JHipster Lite, where is it? It's here. If I just refresh it quickly, you can see I still got the ticks everywhere, but not on undertow. JHipster Lite understood that we reverted that module and that we went back. And so now I can choose another module here. And that's the second concept I wanted to show you. So the first one was the dependencies between modules. If I want to use a web app, a Spring web app, I need to have Spring Boot first. That's a dependency. And then there is what we call features. Here the feature is to have a web server, and you have a choice between Tomcat, undertow, and native. And now I'm going to choose Tomcat. Once Tomcat is applied, I cannot choose undertow again, unless I do what I just did. I revert and come back. Now I'm going to apply Tomcat now. Applied, and if I go back to my app, which was running undertow, if I just rebuild it and run it again, just IntelliJ didn't see it. If I run it again, this time it's going to run with Tomcat. Come on. And this time we've got Tomcat, where is it? Tomcat is here. So same app, but I'm shifted from undertow to Tomcat very easily, thanks to these module systems and thanks to Git. Very easy to change a module if I change my mind. It makes it a lot easier to test stuff. So again, with JHipster Classic, you generate your code once and for all. And if you change your mind, like you didn't want that module, but you wanted another one, well, it's too late. Here, it's not too late. You can revert, try again, and come back. So that's pretty powerful if you are not sure of what you want to do, which is usually the case when you start a project. Basically, for me, with JHipster Classic, we ask you too many questions at the beginning when you are not sure of what you want at the end. So what's going to... let me just do a little parenthesis here. Let's say I'm with my customer and I want to create my app. And if I ask my customer, what do you want? Do you want a cache? Oh, yes, I want a cache. Do you want security? Oh, yes, I want security. Do you want Kafka? Oh, I want Kafka. People will want everything. They will select everything. Then they will have the big hamburger and they will say, oh, it's super slow. Of course, you selected everything because you were not sure of what you wanted at the beginning. And maybe you didn't even need half of the stuff that you selected. But they were free and they looked cool, so you took them. But now it's too late, you can't come back. Here, with JHipster Lite, well, you don't need to choose today. And if you choose today, maybe you can even come back and revert your changes. So that also is what makes it a smaller and more efficient application. It's just because the philosophy is different, and it makes you more efficient at the end. So I created that, let's say, simple Spring Boot app, but it's very easy. You're going to tell me, yeah, but with JHipster, we got the full thing. We've got an Angular front end. We had the database. We got Docker files, and here you're just doing a Tomcat, Hello World application. That's not enough. So let's go more to the right to see where we can go. There's more stuff here. So I'm going to do something a little bit similar to what we do with JHipster Classic now. So I want a full application. I want a PostgreSQL database. I want Liquibase to do my database updates. I want Spring Boot Actuator for monitoring. I want, what do I want? Oh, hang on, I want a front end, I forgot. I want a front end, I want to have Vue.js. Here you can see we've got Svelte, Vue, Angular, and React. I'm going to select Vue because I like Vue better, but it's a matter of choice. Oh, sorry, I want GitHub Actions, and I want GitHub Codespaces. I'm doing some advertisement for Microsoft products at some point. It's now. You should use GitHub Codespaces and GitHub Actions. They're super cool. So I can apply those new modules. As you can see, I can either reapply everything because I changed my mind on some stuff, or I can just apply the new modules. So I'm just going to apply the new modules. It's applied. If I come back here, I've got a lot more new things that have been installed. Yeah, I've got NPM running now. Vue.js has been created here. So Vue.js uses NPM, of course, to generate the front end. So NPM is running, and as NPM is super slow compared to Maven, I'm going to show you the other things before we go to the front end. So for example, for Docker, we selected the PostgreSQL database. We've got a PostgreSQL server available here. For the web app, I can show you a bit here. So we've got some TypeScript code that has been added here for the front end. And and for the test, we still have a full test suite that has been created for everything, including the database, which is here. Well, I can run the test again. So it was fun. The test will be a bit slow for one fun reason. So the tests are still super fast. In fact, we still have 100% code coverage. We test the database using something called test containers, which is super cool. And if you know the people doing test containers, they've launched a company called Atomic Jar, and they've got this new thing that I'm running here that is called Test Containers Cloud to make your test even faster. So that's super cool. And well, unless you have I have now some kind of bug with IntelliJ, all those tests should be super fast. Excepted one test, because we have one test that tests if the database connection is slow. So of course, as it's testing when the database connection is slow, that test is a bit slow. That's the one. That was bugging. Otherwise, everything is super fast. And thanks to test containers, we've got full test of everything, including the database. That's one little, let's say, change with JHipster Classic. With JHipster Classic, we've got Docker nearly everywhere, but we still try not to have Docker when we did not need it. For example, we are pushing to use H2, which is an embedded Java database, and not use Docker. And now we just want full Docker because it's just so much better and easier for everyone. So if I want to run my app, I need to run PostgreSQL here with Docker. So you have tons of ways to run it. It's just with IntelliJ, just to right-click and run it. I've got PostgreSQL running, and now I can just run my application again. And now I've got my web app with PostgreSQL, with Hibernate, and with Liquibase to update the database. So I've got something much more complete. I forgot to show you the front end. Well, I didn't forget. I knew it was going to take time. It's finished. So let me just start here with NPM. That's very similar to what we are doing with JHipster to generate the front end, but there is one philosophical change that I wanted to show. Hang on, JHipster Lite, here it is. In JHipster Classic, we generate a full front end for you. So it's really CRUD oriented. So that's what I called a bit before having a layered application, with a REST API, service layer, and repository layer. And that's a CRUD approach, create, retrieve, update, delete. And we generate a full front end for you with JHipster Classic. With JHipster Lite, the idea is different. We work directly with the CLI of those different tools. So here it's Vite for Vue.js. I love it because it's a French name for fast. And so the front end is much simpler, and it's much more oriented towards people who know Vue.js instead of people who are used to JHipster. So just let me show you how it reloads and how it works, but you can already see it running here. And if I open up the home page, for example, oh, sorry, the screen is pretty small. Here is what is written on the left of the screen. If I say hello, Devox, and I'm going to save now, and you can see I've got automatic code reload. And if you compare to JHipster, it's much, much faster. It's automatic. You see, if I delete stuff, I save now, it's automatic. So the tooling is much lighter and much faster than what we used to have with JHipster Classic. And I think that's a good thing, but that's also a philosophical change, because some people wanted to have the full thing, and here you have something lighter. And that's not one which is better than the other. It's different ideas. And I'm also here at Devox to talk with you, to get feedback, whether you believe it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea. Or maybe we can have both. That's also a possibility. Well, both is sometimes good, but also it takes more time. So if you want both also, maybe you will need to wait longer to have everything. That's a choice. Anyway, here we had let's say, an application which looks a lot like what we have with JHipster Classic, but we can go further. We talked a bit about hexagonal architecture, and usually that's why I have a lot of questions. And so I want to go more on the right here and do a complete application with hexagonal architecture to show you how it works. And also I'm going to show you, yeah, I've got some red, what happens when you've got some issues. You've got issues, you will get those red stuff the more you go to the right, because the more complex it becomes and the more rules you have to fix. Hang on, just one thing I need to select here. We've got the documentation for hexagonal architecture, which is a module which is here, and I want that module to show you some explanation about hexagonal architecture. So I'm going to create what we call dummy. So it's a dummy project. It's a sample hexagonal architecture project, which shows you how it's supposed to work. It's an example, it's a training, it's a tutorial. So if you want to see the full experience and have some information about hexagonal architecture, well, I encourage you to go straight to the right and do everything. And so I want to use this dummy persistence with GPA. And so for this, I've got some red stuff I need to fix. I need to have a liquibase. I need to have authentication. Oh, I forgot authentication before, sorry. Well, we got authentication now. I need to have OpenAPI, I think. What was red again? Sorry. Oh yeah, and I needed liquibase. And here it is. Should be all good. Going to apply all of this. This is going to take more time than before. You remember when I was clicking, it was like going super fast. Now it's slower. What's happening? And in fact, that's normal. That's something I also wanted to show. In order to improve everything, to have clean code and so on, we installed some Git pre-hook commits. So now when I'm committing, typically here with Vue, we've got a pre-hook commit that is having a look, that's doing lint, everything to see if my code is correct and so on. So now I've got more things running. I have a more complete, let's say, workflow to work on. But as I'm committing like 12 modules, this is taking a bit of time to apply all of those commits one after the other because we have more quality control here. And so they are appearing here one by one. And let me just go to the documentation. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, of course, we create a README by default. And the README gives you lots of information about what we just talked about and pushes for some documentation here. And the documentation is generated, one by one. And the documentation I wanted to show you is the one on hexagonal architecture. So you've got a full tutorial with tons of information. The important part is that diagram. So the idea now is that your code has got a limitation by business context, and it's got ports. So you've got primary ports, so things that are driving you, like the web UI, and you've got secondary ports, so things that you are driving, like the database. It's much easier when we have a look at the dummy package that was created. So compared to what we have with JHipster Classic, we would have like a repository, service, and web layer. Here, that's not what we have. We've got a dummy package for our test. Imagine you've got a business, maybe you have a shop package, maybe you have a order management system package, and all those packages are independent from each other. That's what makes your maintenance easier, and that's also why modifying or updating some JHipster module doesn't have any impact on your business code because your business code is cleanly separated from the rest. That's what is helping maintenance now. And if I have a look inside that package, I can see I've got my application, let's say my core module here. I've got my domain model here. And if I open it up, this is not a GPA class. This is not a web layer. It's a normal, let's say, domain object. And if I go to infrastructure, I'm going to have my primary and secondary ports. So primary is what drives me. So that's typically the REST API. Here it is. And secondary, it's what I am driving. So typically it's a database. So if I go here, I've got a B entity, and this time it's a GPA entity. So that means I need to map my code from the database up to the web stack. But that also means that my web stack is independent from the database, and my maintenance is easier. So again, it's a philosophy. It doesn't mean you can't do a crude application with JHipster Lite. And that also doesn't mean you cannot do an hexagonal architecture with JHipster Classic. You can do both. It's just there's a philosophy which is different. And I'm not saying that it's one or the other, or one is better than the other. It's like two different ideas, and that's also why I'm here in front of you, is to get feedback on those ideas. And let me just, by the way, let me just reload the app just to show how this is all running. As we are using Liquibase, this is going to regenerate my database, so my app is running again. I've got security with GWT token, and Liquibase should have, yeah, Liquibase best here. So that's exactly what we were doing with JHipster Classic. We've got a Liquibase changelog, which has been generated here. And if I access my database, oh, by the way, we've got 4 minutes. I can access the database just to show you. Data source. Oh, come on. PostgreSQL. So user is PostgreSQL. Password is password, I think. Test. And that's not the credential. Oh, sorry, I forgot my password. Yeah. Well, it's in the Docker file. What did you do? Oh, no, so it's the username. Oh, it's YOLO and no password. Oh, it's just, yeah. I'm just tired. I don't know why. So it's YOLO and no password. Test. Yes. Yeah, I used the credentials for my demo yesterday, and I don't know why I'm not using the same credentials for all my demos. That is not smart. Yeah, here it is, database objects, and gone. No? Come on. Oh, it's because, oh, maybe I'm not in the right database. It was YOLO. Come on. Well, otherwise you can just trust me, because if it passed, it's because we've got the database table is here. No? Well, it's a bug with IntelliJ probably, or me copy-pasting some wrong stuff. Well, you can trust me, because otherwise Liquibase wouldn't have gone through this here. As we've got 3 minutes, I'm going to go back to my, well, no, not to the slide, hang on. Let me just go back to the main JHipster website. If you want to contribute to JHipster, the main website is here, jhipster.tech. Or if you want to give us some stars, have a look. We're nearly having 20,000 stars, which is awesome. Just we missed 41 stars, and there are more than 41 of you. So please just click, and we will have 20K, and we will be super happy, and we will have a party tonight. And more seriously, if you want to join, we've had more 600 contributors. We're nice and friendly. I see many faces here of JHipster contributors, so you can also go and meet us. And again, we've got 2 projects. There's a classical one, which is very good. Tons of people, tons of modules. If you want something production ready, that's the best one. Then there's the new JHipster Lite, more modern, lots of interesting ideas. Probably something really good for the future. If you want to join JHipster Lite, please join. In the end, as you could see, the applications that we generate look the same. We've got the same philosophy. It's basically all about developer velocity and code quality. So that's why also all of those committers from those 2 different projects, share common ideas and work together. And so if you're interested, please join us. It's a fun project, and it's all open source. If you have any more questions, well, I'm available on Twitter, or we also have a Twitter account at JHipster if you want to follow us or send feedback. And we're just on time. Thank you. Yeah. You need to check why the database didn't work. Yeah. No, but it shouldn't be Postgres. I don't know.
Press schemas.
Schemas? Oh! Why didn't it show up? This is so stupid. Hang on. Refresh. Why don't I? What is this? Public? What? Just show this by default. That's stupid. Here it is. I don't understand. So by default, they just don't show your tables. Like, okay, great UI, IntelliJ, wonderful.
Downstairs, JetBrains.
Oh, JetBrains here. Well, let's go downstairs to the JetBrains booth to have some explanation about that bad UI. No, we love JetBrains. Honestly, I use it all the time.